Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the presentation of the Share Family and Beyond, Cooperation and Innovation to Bring Linked Open Data into Practice. To begin with, what I'd like to do is just a little bit of a summary of what you'll be hearing today. We will go over the Share-VDE background on the Share family. We will review the working groups. We will take a moment to discuss the operational environment that we are developing, and we will go into some depth into the JCricket entity management system. We do have a presentation prepared, and we will take questions at the end of the presentation. So if you could just hold your questions to then, that will be much appreciated. So to begin with, I'd like to give a little bit of a background for the Share-VDE family. So it began with several R&D phases. In 2016, we had the Share Catalog, an online linked data platform for a network of Italian universities and libraries. In 2016, they developed a Share-VDE prototype. Then in 2017 to 2018, Share-VDE members and the LD4P, or Linked Data for Production cohort, members began submitting their data into the prototype. So from 2019 to 2021, Share-VDE evolves into a real effective environment for library linked data, and the membership continues to grow during this period. And in 2021, the Share family embraces all of the initiatives. So by 2021, it is quite complex environment. It's embracing all of the initiatives supported by the linked open data platform technology that it's developed. And in January 2021, the PCC data pool joins, and this is very important. They join Share-VDE. And in 2021, also Share-VDE, the new data management system and entity discovery portal, the 2.0 version, is launched, and that is what is currently live and can be seen at sharevde.org. So we continue to, the development is continuing. So we've added new members of the family. One very interesting one is the National Bibliographies family, and they are doing their work in launching a linked open data environment specific for national bibliographies. We have the Share Family linked data ecosystem for infrastructure towards the production of this environment, which really began in earnest in 2022. And in 2023, the British National Library has gone live with their beta. So in 2023, we also did a launch of Parsifal, which is a group of libraries in Italy. The other big job and big work that we're very excited about and that we will be talking about more in depth today is JCricket Editor, which is scheduled to be launched and available to the Share-VDE members in December, January 2024. So as I said, the Share family is a true linked data ecosystem, and there are many different families, and or you could think of them as communities. Each community has its own initiatives, its own goals, its own specific challenges that it's addressing. But we benefit because all of us share common knowledge and expertise. So what one family is working on may be important to what I'm doing at my local library. They may have more expertise because their collections contain more of that information. And so I benefit from allowing their expertise to work on the problems, and then I can share in the solutions. So Share-VDE has a set of principles. The first is that, I'm sorry, missed a step. The first is that we are cooperative. So as I mentioned, we are a member-driven organization, and everything that we do is determined by the libraries themselves. So this is a chance for everyone to have a very active role in the development of Share-VDE initiatives. We are sustainable in that all members share the cost. So the cost, we try to keep the cost at very low overhead. So, the more members there are, the lower that cost becomes for everyone involved. It is interoperable, so we are using BIBFRAME as our primary data model, and the idea is to be able to use this framework to make our data interoperable across multiple systems and within multiple environments. And we are committed to open data, so all Share-VDE data is open. We believe that open data supports diversity because it is allowing people to use the data across multiple initiatives that each individual member may be dedicated and want to do. And we're also sharing the data across libraries and cultural heritage institutions, so that actually expands the capacity of both libraries and cultural heritage to provide a better, more robust discovery environment. So we are flexible, and this is very important to join Share-VDE. There is no need for any individual member to change anything about the current library systems they're running. We are platform agnostic. We will work with any iOS or LSP. And finally, we are authoritative. So as a member of Share-VDE, you know who is making modifications to the data and where that data is coming from. And if there are questions that need to be resolved about how the data is represented, those questions are answered by the community themselves. So, you don't have to wonder, why am I seeing something this way? It doesn't seem correct. It is your peers and your colleagues that are doing this work. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the process of the Share-VDE data system. And I'm sorry, this is going a bit. So the first thing is that we receive input from different institutions. Institutions can send us their data in a variety of formats. We accept everything, Mark 21, Unimark, BibFrame, other formats that individual institutions may have. Share-VDE then provides a series of linked data platform services that include mapping of that data, URI enrichment, the reconciliation and creation of linked data entities and their conversion into RDF BibFrame. The results are multiple. So the first is that you have data publication. So you have the end user discovery portals, you have APIs that can request Sparkle. Using Sparkle, you can request the data in just about any format you need. You have data distribution, so you can actually distribute your data. So this is important in sharing the data across the members. And if I need to share it with other systems that are not included in the Share family, I can download my own institution's data and then share it upload it to other systems as needed. And there is a shared data management. So we can actually edit the entities, and we'll be talking about that more fully later in the presentation. And then there are additional services. So Share-VDE offers authority, control, and mark, and in BIBFRAME. So for those of you who want updated authorities, that is a service that's provided that you get with the membership. And you also have access to the Share Family Index, which is the registry of all of the entities in Share-VDE data repository. So just to summarize, you can see that there are multiple outputs that a consortia or a single library who's a member of Share-VDE can have. They're ranging from the linked data descriptions and enriched MARC records, the discovery portal, the JCricket editor, and the authority services. So this, we are hoping, will provide some major benefits to our members. Quality, which we've discussed, knowing that it's from an authoritative group of people actually working on the data. A better exposition of the data will allow better use of it by each institution's user. Superior integration capacity, because we're using the BIBFRAME model, and we are, as I say, platform agnostic, and trying to promote greater engagement with the data so that we are actually facilitating exchanges of information between libraries and cultural heritage institutions or across libraries within a consortium. So our principles outlined above, which were, of course, cooperative, sustainable, interoperable, open, flexible, and authoritative, guide all of the development priorities that we have at Share-VDE. And they present some unique challenges, concerns, as we work towards progressively building a new bibliographic ecosystem. So by adopting BIBFRAME and as the main ontology, and we're trying also to make it compliant with the IFLA LRM, we are trying to really make use of the potentials of linked data. So each institution will have its own priorities and needs. And what we're really trying to do with the BIBFRAME adoption in our anthologies is to make it to create an environment where each institution can pursue those needs independently. So we are not interested in telling any individual member how they should present their library data, how they should exchange it, how they should work. And most importantly, in this scheme, MARC can coexist with BIBFRAME. So again, institutions do not have to convert the cataloging in MARC. They can continue doing all of their work in MARC exactly as they're doing today, but they can still take advantage of the BIBFRAME model. So we have the entity discovery approach, which is our discovery environment. It is the first of its kind, and it is where the linked data is perhaps most the benefits of linked data are most evident. And by using linked open data, we're moving the library catalog to become a true research tool, not just an index of the inventory of an individual institution. And I think that that is something that many libraries are struggling with, and we believe that we can actually help. It also is good because the linked data, just to give you a couple of examples, it allows you to integrate your library holdings with other repositories that your institutions may have that are specific to images, music, but also it is actually a better data model for discovery of foreign language materials, and often this stuff is missed in traditional library catalogs and current discovery systems. So if someone doesn't purposefully look for holdings in a specific language, they may miss much of what a library has. Okay, so again, as I mentioned, our data is always open, and it's open in all phases of the transformation and conversion. then the independence from both local practices and from local choices of ILS and LSP, as I mentioned earlier, is one of the big points. Again, I can't say it enough. To be a member of Share-VDE, you can take advantage of everything that we have to offer without having to change any of your local practices or systems. Okay, and then finally, what we're looking to do is to use the linked open data in a concrete fashion, and this is why the Share-VDE discovery portal is so important, because it is an example of how a linked data environment and ecosystem actually works. It's not theoretical, it is actual, concrete, in operations today. Okay. So as an example of this, what I'd like to do is briefly provide an overview of the Share-VDE environment. Some of you may know this, some of you may not, so it's going to be a really quick overview. And much of what I'm sorry about that, much of what I talk about will be picked up later in more detail. So the first thing I want to highlight is that we are committed to open data. And so when we convert data into BIBFRAME RDF, it is stored as a triple. And we have a complete triple store indexing, which is at the heart of everything that we do. So the cluster knowledge base, which then holds all these triples and accesses the triples, is what is driving our discovery. And again, that database is what will be made. Not only can you search it, but what you can edit using the JCricket editor. And again, this will be discussed more as we move through the presentation. So when I say it's at the heart, and I know this is a scary slide and don't get lost in the details here. When I say it's at the heart, what I mean is every linked data community that we have in the Share family is its own tenant in our system. So Share-VDE tenant, which is primarily North American academic and national libraries, is one tenant. There is a specific national bibliographies tenant. Each community works only on its own data, and its data is stored in its own entity registry. That said, there is a shared family index that everyone can look at, which reflects the holdings and the data of all of the tenants. So within each tenant, the discovery skin, the discovery portal, can actually be customized to reflect the concerns of the individual community. So obviously the National Bibliographies community has slightly different concerns with how they want users to search and interact with their data than academic libraries. And so these systems are set up to accommodate the needs of the individual communities. And again, the decisions on how they are set up is completely community driven. Okay, so within any individual tenant, each member of the tenant can also be represented by an institutional skin. So within the Share-VDE tenant, which again are primarily academic institutions in North America, you can see, if you go there, you can look at the tenant, which would show you the entire collection of all institutions. And so you can search across all institutions as if it's a union catalog for those institutions. Or you can actually go to this individual skins for the individual institutions. So for example, I'm at NYU. NYU has its own skin. NYU users could opt to say, I only want to search the NYU tenant. And so what happens is that at the individual institution tenant, search results are primarily filtered by the institution first, and then you have an option to say, okay, can I expand the search to include all of the institutions? And so this is an example of how the tenants look. So you can see that there are a number of skins for a number of individual tenants, as well as the combined tenant for Share-VDE. Okay, so that was a very rapid discussion, and there was a lot in that. If you're interested in having more in-depth discussion or really exploring it, much more information can be found on our website at Share-VDE, share-family.org. There you can go as in-depth into Share-VDE as you like. There are also a lot of pages that have much broader overviews, recaps of what I've discussed. But before handing over to the next presenter, what I would like to do is just say there are some future steps that we are currently looking at, and two areas that we are looking at in particular is how do we expand the BIBFRAME RDF framework to accommodate art and music, and there are individual families looking at this. So, we're very excited because I think, again, for most institutions, this is one of the most challenging areas, is how do you deal with bringing into your discovery system more specialized areas that are not represented well by bibliographies. So with that, I'd like to pass everything off to Jim, and he will discuss a bit more the working groups and the ontology.
Okay, thank you, Nina. My name is Jim Hahn. I work for the University of Pennsylvania Libraries. I've been working there for about 4 years, and in the time that I've been there, I've been heavily involved in a couple of the working groups of Share-VDE. Penn has been a participant from almost the very earliest R&D stages. The working groups kind of feed into all of, so very many of the activities, almost all of the activities that are happening. There's a National Bibliographies Working Group that, of course, encompasses many of the national bibliographies that are members now. There's the group that's working on Unimark. Within the actual Share-VDE, there's an advisory council that's meeting twice monthly. The group I'm going to be talking the most about right now is our Entity Identification Working Group. We also have several other groups that have shaped like authority management, and also our knowledge base editor. And so as their work is being developed, they're on hold, but our Entity Identification Working Group has most recently been working on an ontology extension, or what we are calling the Share-VDE ontology, which is really just extending BibFrame for the needs of Share-VDE. And I'll step into some of the details. So we did have a presentation at the BibFrame workshop in Europe very recently, so you could take a look at that. Also, we'll have links to the ontology if you'd like to read through that. I'm going to step through some of the core classes. What our principles are really taking a look at existing rules from the Library of Congress, so as not to we're not really reinventing any mappings. We're building off mappings for the needs of this federated discovery environment. And there's been some good cooperation with IFLA standing committees as well. So next, what I'm going to do is just kind of step into some of the core areas of our ontology. Now, as I said, it is the Share-VDE ontology is designed as an extension for BibFrame, and many of our data models actually exist as conceptual drawings like this, and conceptual modeling can be a bit fuzzy. So what we've done is try to take an attribute modeling approach, which I'll unpack as I talk through this. But what we've tried to say is, like, rather than direct conceptual entity mapping, which is very fuzzy and somewhat intractable in some cases, what we've done is just aligned with existing BIBFRAME. So here, this conceptual model was asserting first that our Share-VDE work is a subclass of a BIBFRAME work. And then we have our Share-VDE opus, which is sort of our top level, and it has a correspondence to the LRM work. We use an object property called Share-VDE has expression in order to relate the Share-VDE opus with the Share-VDE work. And then we're also in the process, this is sort of the final stages before we officially release our Share-VDE ontology, which is defining the types of opuses that we have. So we'll have these named individuals that will be, these are instances of the class Share-VDE opus type, and those will be forthcoming. So, well, some interesting sort of takeaways that I view as like some goodies that we can put out there in the world is that you can reuse this ontology not just in the Share family, but any system that is looking for sort of approaches to bridge among BIBFRAME, IFLA, LRM, and RDA. The Share-VDE ontology could be reused in those discovery environments. And as I was saying, we've unpacked this process of asserting that bibliographic entities are described by attribute sets, and this set modeling approach is a little bit of a departure. You can find some echoes of it in IFLA LRM, but it isn't the key way that's being modeled. But it's almost brought up as an aside and then not really revisited. But I think there's some really interesting uses there. So here's how we've used it: is we've suggested that our opus is our class, the Share-VDE opus, is a parallel class to the IFLA LRM work and RDA work. And the way we assert that is to say the set of attributes that would comprise the Share-VDE opus parallel those attributes in the IFLA LRM work, and similarly the RDA work. And then if we step down a level, our Share-VDE work as a subclass of the BIBFRAME work, it would contain the set of attributes that comprise the attributes that are in the IFLA LRM expression and the RDA expression. That is, I think, some of our intellectual contributions to some mapping problems, which we do by kind of sidestepping the mapping problems using attribute approaches. Some key takeaways before we move on to sort of that operational environment that would reuse the ontology. Direct entity mapping, it's not quite used to achieve these Share-VDE ontology concordances. We're using some minimal ontological commitment made by observing that set attributes define an entity. And this is really a way to underscore that we find value in RDA, BIBFRAME, and IFLA LRM, and each perspective are contributing to this task of bibliographic description and helping us achieve our aims in the Share-VDE discovery environment. So with that, I will pass along to Tiziana for our operational environment.
So, thank you. Yes, I will try to say something about how Share-VDE is producing a real operational environment and working within an integrated and hybrid environment. We are using BIBFRAME as linked data to to realize some services that, as Nina said before, can coexist with a more traditional environment. So the shared community is producing a certain number of tools and using different data sources to put in practice this heterogeneous environment, including, of course, traditional workflows. And I will say something more about this after. Sebastian will talk broadly about this, but this simply introduced me to the concept of entity knowledge base, what we call cluster knowledge base, and its value in terms of cooperation between libraries. The cluster knowledge base is conceived as the end result of a complex process of identification, clusterization, but also is considered a sort of a starting point for cooperatively building new services. So starting from a record coming from a single library, the record is split in different entities. This is an example of an instance entity with all possible properties useful to identify the entity. And this process is the heart of the system, and each library can contribute to produce this entity following its own ability to view, to have a view, a particular view of the entity. So for example, we can start from a bunch of data produced by one library, but within the CKB, this is not the only description, this is not the only way to view and to interpret the entity. The same entity can be contributed by different libraries, and so all together produce what we define as the prism, that is the entity or the cluster. So you can understand how rich this entity can be in terms of attributes and relationship. And each phase of this prism represents a local description of the same entity. This is to respect the ability and the need of each library to describe its own entity. So the prism is a complex object and is the result of a bunch of attributes, that is the data properties that can have a literal as value, but also links with external sources, so external entities, and relationships, that is the connection between two prisms within the same data set. So at the center of the whole workflow, we have Sapientia for the case of Share-VDE, that is the cluster or entities knowledge base. And this storage contains integrated, clustered, enriched entities. So the entity cluster knowledge base is the actionable cluster environment where entities live together. It is the result of a complex automated process, and of course, some error can happen, can occur, or definitely will occur for sure. For this reason, the community decided to develop the entity editor to permit humans to improve the quality of machine data. So the entity editor makes possible to involve all authorized librarians to cooperate, enhancing the data quality within the knowledge base. Each cataloger can work on its own proper data using the provenance to identify its own data, or centrally for the whole participant library. libraries. And which kind of operation the librarian can do? Can edit the properties, a property, add a property, update, delete, or can invalidate a cluster in case the automatic processes produce it for error, or can merge multiple prism in one, for example, two prisms that were created, Mark Twain and Samuel Clemens, that should be a part of the same entity, or can split a prism in multiple prisms. So when something is wrong in the clusterization process. And how the librarian can act on the CKB, starting from the same Share-VDE portal interface, of course, with the specific authorization level. The librarian can edit the entity that is on the focus of the page, and can, so after I have done a search, can edit and is automatically he can move to the entity editor JCricket with a specific interface where a lot of different features are admitted. So this is the concept of a collaboration to enhance a library workflow and services. Member libraries send their records are transformed in entities and stored in the Sapienza cluster knowledge base. The cluster knowledge base can be enriched by JCricket entity editor, and according to their local or network policies, libraries can implement their services, for example, for the end users, for the community, but also for librarians, some specific services, the discovery portal, the authoritative services, the shared cataloging, so how to move from a concept of copy cataloging to shared cataloging, to put in practice statistics and evaluation, collection development, interlibrary loan, and so on. Just to give you briefly an example before pass to Sebastian. This is a zoom on authority services that the shared community realized, starting from some suggestion and input coming from Stanford University. Record in Mark 21 are enriched, that are checked, are enriched with the URIs, external URIs, and can be imported again in the local system. So a certain number of control and features to enhance the quality. And now we will start as community the second phase, that is the authority services fully integrated in the linked open data environment. But about this third-party integration with a specific use case about Folio, I let Sebastian say something more.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. I'm Sebastian. I'm the co-founder of Index Data, a little technology company that has been building collaborative technology and technology for libraries over the past 30 years or so. I want to talk about and try to shine a light on Share-VDE from a little bit of an outsider's perspective, specifically from the point of view of library automation and local library workflows and how this might all unfold, and specifically sort of based on the work that I've done over the past 8 years on the Folio projects. So we began that work in 2015 with an unimaginable level of support from EBSCO and from the initial cohort of libraries that came to the table. My team at Index Data was charged with coming up with a technical vision for how we could build a platform that could support the needs of a huge range of different types of libraries in the midst of a migration away from a past model, a past ecosystem of bibliographic collaboration and sharing into something new, with the big challenge being that we had no idea what that would look like. We knew that there would have to be some type of infrastructure to support collaborative entity management And it would look fundamentally different from the type of batch sharing of MARC records and copy cataloging that we were used to, but we had no idea what that ecosystem would look like. So when developers are met with that kind of uncertainty, we're trying to design for something 10 years in the future, not for something 10 years in the past, we approach it with modularity and with abstraction layers. And so I want to talk a little bit about sort of the folio view on this, which starts with the idea of very distinct workflows supported by different apps that are themselves replaceable. That's a core principle of folio. It's basically built around an app store model like a smartphone, where you can take these units of functionality and replace them. The central point is the instance. The instances are housed in an inventory module, an inventory app, and represents the holdings of the library, either electronically or physically. And it contains lightweight descriptions of those data, of those bibliographic entities, editions of a book and so on, right? Those things can then be described in all kinds of different ways. And part of the fun of folio is how many of those ways have already unfolded today. So lots of libraries are using MARC in different ways to describe their bibliographic entities. Some libraries are using shared catalogs, like in Germany, where the folio inventory is essentially a slave to those central catalogs. Shared BIBFRAME is already a thing in Sweden. We're seeing now, which is really cool, a whole range of different shared platforms emerge from managing this kind of stuff. So what we're seeing essentially, and where this meets the road, where the rubber meets the road as far as this is concerned, is the idea that data can flow from inventory and folio into, as Tiziana says, a facet of a prism that describes an entity that is part of the description of a shared entity in Sapienza that has a shared identifier, right? I want to emphasize this because I think that the facet concept, the prism concept, is absolutely central to the type of infrastructure we're going to need to make the journey to collaborative entity management, because we're not all going to be making it at the same time, at the same pace. We will not all be doing it in the same way. So technology that can handle that ambiguity is super critical. So this, to me, is central to this. So the way it looks and the way that this technology enables collaboration and integration and innovation is, it starts with the flow of data coming from individual libraries. Entities are represented as prisms or as entities within the system. The data flows out now and can be used in a lot of different ways based on this platform. There's a Solr index that you can use to do, standard bibliographic searching, building facets, and so on. There's a relational database interface that you can use to generate reports. There are RDF triple stores. There are triple stores that you can use to query the system in that way. And from that, you can build integration with ILSs. You can build new types of products, discovery tools, resource sharing tools, and so on. University of Pennsylvania has already shown integration between the local ILS and a shared portal based on this technology, both in terms of placing holds, patron satisfaction, and discovery integration, right? So where we're at with folio right now is we've got sort of the base level of integration going. We've shown that we can flow bit data back and forth between the two platforms, and we're looking forward to eventually having a full integration of JCricket into folio, as well as integration with other tools built by the Library of Congress, by the LD4P community, all potentially contributing to this shared pool. The last thing I just want to say is this isn't just about local library workflows. It's about sharing potentially. It's about collaborative collection lifecycle management. It's about resource sharing. It's about collaborative cataloging. It's about all those things, right? So this feeds into potentially lots of different areas. And the one thing I want to say before I leave is that I think ultimately the most important thing that I have found about Share-VDE is the notion of community governance. You've already seen a community here of technology providers and libraries and consortia come together to steer this together. And that's something I'd love to see in other platforms that we depend on as a community. So that's my lightning talk. Thank you all.